Hello, greetings, and welcome to this channel. Thank you so much for being here today. This is a place where I talk about spiritual growth, and it is based on the idea that the deity, the God of all, is a spiritual God, not a human, and that we, according to Christian teaching anyway, are made in the image and likeness of this God and therefore are spiritual. As you know, I have introduced material from Catholicism, Roman Catholicism, and from Orthodoxy, and also from some modern teachers who are not affiliated with any particular religion, but just are seeking spirituality in a generic sense. And I thought today we needed to address the question, is there a place in Christianity for a metaphysical interpretation of the Bible? And if there is, where is it found? And I will answer directly, yes, it is, and it is found in the teachings of a woman named Mary Baker Eddy in the denomination called Christian Science, which is a metaphysical interpretation of scriptures, and a church based on the very ideas that we have been discussing from the brothers and sisters in the monasteries, from the saints, and from other spiritual sources. And that is the idea of unity with the divine, becoming godlike or Christ-like, and developing strength spiritually. I thought the best way to introduce you to this branch of Christianity, as opposed to just inserting snippets here and there in my teaching, is to rewind for you two videos I've made from the past. The first one is from 2021, and the second was made a couple of years later that gives additional information. So I'm starting with the basics, the very basics of the history of that movement, that spiritual movement called Christian Science, and then how the actual church works or is manifested. And I will put links of everything that I mention as we go along in the description box. So this is going to be a little bit longer than my videos usually are. You can stop at any time, rewind, move ahead to the second video if you think you'd like that one better. And I hope you'll leave me your comments and questions at the end. And then when I share some of the concepts that you'll recognize as coming from Christian Science, you will have a working knowledge of where these ideas are coming from in my life. Two things. I've known many Christian scientists in my life. Those of you who have seen any biographical material about me know that my paternal grandparents were Christian scientists, mostly their whole lives. My father was raised in the Christian Science church, and I was not. But because of that connection, I myself and other members of the family have always been interested in what was that all about and what did they teach. And the second thing is the idea of being a Christian Science teacher. I am not affiliated at this time with that church, and therefore I am not an authorized teacher of Christian Science. but some of the ideas and teachings that I embrace in my own spiritual walk are just a natural part of me now, and I'll just be sharing them the same way that I do the things that I embrace from other sources. So here we go with the first video from 2021. Hope you enjoy it. Hi, and thanks for joining with me again today. Today I want to talk to you about a much more recent development in spiritual thought and religious history. And that is the beginnings of, and just a small portion of the teachings of a movement called Christian Science. And more about that title in just a moment, because it is very often misunderstood. It is the name of a religious movement and an actual denomination, primarily in the United States, but with sections all over the world. The founder of this religious movement was a woman in the United States named Mary Baker Eddy. And her years are from 1821 till 1910. And the official name of the church that she founded is the Church of Christ Scientist. The Church of Christ Scientist. And the actual church itself was founded in 1879. She also was the founder of something you might be familiar with, a Pulitzer Prize winning newspaper that she founded in 1908 that was called the Christian Science Monitor, and is still being published to this day. Eddy herself was named one of the 100 most significant Americans of all time. That was in 1914 by Smithsonian Magazine, by the Smithsonian Institute. And her main book, the primary text other than scripture of the faith, is called Science and Health with Key to the Scripture. And it was ranked one of the 75 books by women whose words have changed the world. And that was by the Women's National Book Association. And so this is the text, and it is available today, Science and Health with Key to the Scriptures. And this is primarily the text of her teaching. Now, how the transformation of Mary Baker Eddy came about was slow. I suppose you would say it was slow. She was the youngest of 6 children. Her background in New England was Congregationalist. She was often sick as a child and seems to have suffered from some type of eating disorder. She had chronic indigestion as a child. She was received into the Congregational denomination, but she objected strongly to the idea of predestination, which is a basic Calvinist, Presbyterian, and therefore Congregationalist belief at the time, and also eternal damnation. She did not believe in hell. She was married 3 times. 2 of her husbands died, and one she was divorced from, and she had 1 child, a son. On February 1st, 1866, she slipped and fell on ice while walking in Lynn, Massachusetts, causing a spiral injury. I'm sorry, a spinal injury. On the 3rd day after that, being bedridden, she called for her Bible and opened it at Matthew 9:2. And of course, the Bible she had at the time was the King James. And she read, "And behold, they brought to him a man sick with a palsy, lying on a bed. And Jesus, seeing their faith, said unto the sick of the palsy, Son, be of good cheer, thy sins are forgiven thee." And she writes, "As I read, the healing truth dawned upon my sense, and the result was that I arose, dressed myself, and ever after was in better health than I had enjoyed before." That short experience included a glimpse of the great fact that I have since tried to make plain to others, namely, life in and of spirit, this life being the sole reality of existence. And then she spent the next 3 years of her life in biblical study of finding in greater detail this discovery that she went on to call Christian Science. This is something that she says is in the scripture, and she discovered it. She became convinced that illness could be healed through an awakened thought brought on by a clearer perception of God. So what you may know about Christian Science is that it is a denomination of Christians following the Christian God who emphasize healing very much. So after having her own healing experience and studying the scriptures carefully for actually the rest of her life, Mrs. Eddy began to heal others. And then she began to teach other people who were interested in healing in this way to pray effectively for healing. She saw this as the mission that Jesus had given to the church. He sent his disciples out to heal the sick and to release those who were oppressed. And she saw that this ministry was missing in the church of her day. And she sought to restore Christianity to the original directions of Jesus, to go forth and to heal. And she saw this healing as the evidence that you were on the right track spiritually, that you understood the spiritual way that Jesus had healed. You were, in fact, becoming Christ-like, and this was the evidence of that. Now, this form of teaching was metaphysical, and therefore it was rejected by much of, I would say by all of the mainstream church. That did not, however, deter her, and she continued her work. It expanded as a form of mysticism or metaphysics, I suppose we should say. Mrs. Eddy's work contained a number of similarities to Hinduism. And in her earlier editions, she admitted the harmony between Christian Science and Vedantic philosophy, and even quoted from Hindu writings. But after the 34th edition, these quotations had been removed. There is also a quote, this is from Damodar Singhal, who says the Christian Science movement in America was possibly influenced by India. The founder of this movement, Mary Baker Eddy, in common with the Vedantins, believed that matter and suffering were unreal, and that a full realization of this fact is essential for relief from ills and pains. The Christian Science doctrine has naturally been given a Christian framework, but the echoes of Vedanta in its literature are often striking. There's also been controversy, which you may have heard, about whether Christian Scientists are allowed to go to doctors. They believe in spiritual healing through prayer. But I can assure you that Christian Scientists are allowed to go to doctors and even are encouraged to do so if their illness is such that they are unable to cure themselves, or with the help of a practitioner, a Christian Science healer, and especially if the illness is life-threatening. Christian Science heals through prayer, through identification with Jesus and the way he prayed. And so while they do not have pastors or priests in the religion, they have what are called practitioners. And these are people who have been trained especially to help people in prayer, to support them in prayer. Practitioners charge for their service, but they are not allowed to have any secular employment in addition to being a practitioner. If they've chosen to be a practitioner, this is their source of income. Sometimes people in Christian communities don't understand that because their pastors or their priests pray for them without charge. But the difference is that the pastor or the priest is already supported by the church, and this is just one of their functions. A practitioner receives no money from the Christian Science Church, and this is the source of their income. There are also people trained as Christian Science nurses, and these people care for the sick. And they do things like help the elderly or the ill with cleansing or changing of bandages or dressings, or helping prepare their food for them. And they have been trained by the Christian Science religion to function in this helpful way for people who are struggling with illness. As I mentioned just a moment ago, there are no ministers or priests in this branch of Christianity. So what happens in a worship service? The leaders of the service are readers. There are two of them, called the first reader and the second reader. There are no sermons in Christian Science worship. There are readings, first from Scripture, and secondly, from the textbook Science and Health with Key to the Scriptures. Mrs. Eddy did not want her teachings to be changed or diluted in any way. And so in that particular denomination, people do not take what she has written or the scripture and add to it their own opinions. And she believed this would keep the teaching pure. Another thing that Christian Scientists have that you may have come across and wondered what they were, in many cities they have what are called reading rooms. And these are places where the public is invited to come in. There are books there, Christian Science books, primarily the Science and Health book, but also some magazines which they publish, the Christian Science Sentinel, the Christian Science Journal, other writings by Mary Baker Eddy, hymn books. These things are there for purchase, or you may just come and sit in a reading room and pray. There is always someone there to help you find what you're looking for, so you may read their words or purchase them for yourself. And there are still reading rooms today. Many in larger cities are open with regular business hours. Some in smaller towns and cities as a separate room in the church that is only opened maybe once or twice during the week. Well, let me give you just one or two quotes from her text to give you a flavor. And these are from chapter 14, which is called Recapitulation. After almost 500 pages of teachings, this is a review and question and answer form. What is God? Answer. God is the incorporeal, divine, supreme, infinite. Now these words are capitalized. Mind, spirit, soul, principle, life, truth, love. Are these terms synonymous? They are. They refer to one absolute God. Is there more than one God or principle? There is not. What is error? The answer, error is a supposition that pleasure and pain, that intelligence, substance, life are existent in matter. Error is neither mind nor one of mind's faculties, that is, mind with a capital M. They are not, error is not of God, nor one of God's faculties. Error is the contradiction of the truth. And so Mrs. Eddy in her Christian Science teaches that God is truth with a capital T, and much of our human thinking is in error. And I'll just read one additional excerpt. Does Christian Science or metaphysical healing include medication, material hygiene, mesmerism, that is a kind of mind control, hypnotism, theosophy or spiritualism? Answer, not one of them is included in it. In divine science, the supposed laws of matter yield to the law of mind, capital M for mind, so that there is a spiritual law that supersedes any law that we might consider the natural or physical laws of our world. Science, with a capital S, must triumph over material sense and truth over error, thus putting an end to the hypotheses involved in all false theories and practices. So that gives you a bit of flavor of that movement. And of course, additional information is available online. Just do a search for the Christian Science Church or Mary Baker Eddy, and it will lead you to all of their available resources. Well, now it's time to move on to the second video that I made. That first video was watched by thousands of people over the years, and this second video goes into more detail about some of the things that are available for you that you can research and find. So here we go with video number 2. I've noticed recently a lot of interest in a video that I made a long time ago about Christian Science, and I'll explain that term in just a minute. This is a religious movement and a denomination within Christianity called a Church of Christ, Scientist. So this is a movement from the late 1800s, and it was begun by a woman named Mary Baker Eddy. All kinds of information about both the movement and Mrs. Eddy is available online, and many biographies have been written about her. A very famous and well-known author and religious person. So her most famous book and the foundation of the denomination is called Science and Health with Key to the Scriptures. And this is available anywhere where you buy books today. And it is the foundational text alongside of the Bible for the church. Now, Mrs. Eddy had some very strong ideas about religion and about how the church should be run. And one of them is the fact that this is really the pastor of the church. This and the Bible are the main parts of the worship service on Sunday, and also any kind of talks that you hear or writings by Christian scientists. But I want to tell you about some of the other resources. And the most important one I want to tell you about is called the Christian Science Quarterly Bible Lessons. And this is an old one. This is from June 2022. And this comes out monthly. And this is the text for the Sunday morning worship services. But it also is used for study during the week. Each week of the month, for example, back in 2022, the first week was May 30th through June 5th. There is going to be a topic that is covered, and then a series of texts from the Bible, and then correlated text from Science and Health with Key to the Scriptures. And so that's how this book works. And so the person would have studied these texts and quotations during the week, and then would hear them presented again en masse on Sunday in the church service. So, also in this little booklet, which comes out monthly, are a list of the topics for Bible lesson subjects. This is not something that is created anew by people over 120 years later. This is a list of 26 topics that are gone through twice a year, coming, of course, to the 52 weeks of the year. So those are the subjects that are covered. Now the text changes, and then the terms or the tenets of Christian Science are listed, and then a list of other resources that are available. One is the Christian Science Journal, and that is also a monthly publication that has articles and testimonies. And the journal also includes a list of all the practitioners and their contact information that want to be listed in the journal. The next thing is the, it also lists the Christian Science nurses. And I explain what practitioners and nurses are in my previous video, which is linked below. Then is the Sentinel. The Sentinel comes out weekly, and it is a booklet full of testimonies, people who have healed or believe they've been healed according to the Christian Science procedure. And all of these are available online as well as in hard copy. JSH Online is a monthly subscription that includes the journal, the Sentinel, and another publication, the Herald. The site is also listed, and that is christianscience.com. You can get all kinds of information about all of those things. Another thing that you find in the back of this booklet is the Lord's Prayer and Mrs. Eddy's spiritual sense of that prayer. Just a couple more things about Christian Science. Why does she insist on calling it a science? Well, if you just think of science in the broadest terms, a scientist develops a hypothesis or something that he believes will be the result of an experiment. And if the hypothesis is correct and eventually will become a theory, he or she is able to replicate the experiment and get the same results. And she has applied this idea to her way of healing in Christian Science, that if you take the procedure, the protocol that she has presented from the scripture that she believes is what Jesus used, anyone who presents it correctly and practices it can get the same result. And the result is often healing of disease or deliverance from sin. But the emphasis in Christian Science, although being on the outside, you might look at it and think, oh, it's healing, getting healed, healing diseases. The emphasis, I would put it in my terms, is understanding the divine, unity with God, following Jesus closely, having the same relationship and understanding deeply our relationship with the Father as the same as that Jesus had. And the result of all of that unity and understanding of God very often results in healing. And that's because she believes it is reproducible using her method, that it is in fact a science that she didn't invent, but she has discovered within the pages of the scripture. Well, you might ask, is this method only available to members of the Christian Science Church? And their answer is absolutely not. That this book, Science and Health with Key to the Scripture, is sold on the open market, and anyone can purchase it and study it, and as they grow in understanding, can have the same results as a member of the Christian Science Church. Another way that one can benefit from Christian Science, and if you're not a member of the church, is you are able to call a Christian Science practitioner if you're ill and ask for Christian Science healing or Christian Science prayer. For the practitioner, there's a difference between general prayer and performing a Christian Science treatment procedure. So in that case, they'd like you to be putting your faith totally in God. But like all other religions that I know of, they support individuals and communities and the world in general in prayer daily. So you can get Christian Science treatment and not be a Christian Scientist. In order to be authorized as a Christian Science teacher, you had to have gone through special training and be a member in good standing of the church. Now, if you want to hear from the board of lecturers, there is a select group of Christian Scientists who work with the mother church, that's the church located in Boston, Massachusetts, and with the directors of the Christian Science Church to present talks in the various churches around the world. And they also share their talks on a YouTube channel called Prayer That Heals. Prayer That Heals. And those people that you see on that channel are the official board of lectureship, that the people that are equipped and effectively and correctly share the teachings of Christian Science with the world. So if you're interested in watching any of those, the average talk is about an hour. They explain the religion, they explain the teachings of the text, Science and Health, and how it correlates with the Bible. And they give testimonies of healings either in their own life or their own ministry as a practitioner. So you might be interested in those as well. Between now and next time I talk to you, please stay safe and healthy. I'll see you real soon.